Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to the show. And as you could tell, we have a very special guest indeed. We are joined by the fantastic Lew Temple. You guys may know Lew best as Axel from The Walking Dead, but Lew also has done a lot of work with a lot of Rob Zombie movies, such as The Devil's Reject, Halloween, 31, and he's done plenty of other movies and TV shows. Lew, how are you today?
Sam, I'm really wonderful. Thanks so much for having me on Sam's Universe. I'm excited to be part of it, actually. And I know you and I have been trying to make this happen. So it's really great that we actually are. And thanks again for having me.
No, thank you for joining. As I said, it's been a bit of almost a long time coming, really, and I really appreciate you holding out to join us. It means the world.
Yeah, and that we're able to do it, I think, is it speaks to the technology and today's society. You know, that we can do this Zoom and have a proper visit in real time, and that you're able to distribute it, you know, and as part of your show, which is incredible. And during the course of this crazy pandemic we just came out of, I'm sure you were busy with your regular podcasting.
Yeah. So actually, during the pandemic is very much sort of where the idea came up for me. You know, I felt like there was a time where a lot of people kind of got a bit run down and a bit sort of struggled a lot. And I kind of feel that, you know, getting to speak to people like yourself and directors and musicians, it was such an amazing moment because a lot of people were able to share their life experiences, and I feel a lot of people gained sort of hope again sort of during the pandemic. So yeah, it's, you know, getting some of the positive reviews of just some of the beautiful words guests have said is unbelievable.
Oh, that's great. And you know, you provide a service to those who like to tune in or listen, or that you know, put together through organizational skills, technological skills, and that you have the wherewithal to keep going forward, that give people the opportunity to experience more than ever today and right now. So good on you and Sam's Universe.
Thank you very much, Lew. That's amazing. Thank you. I appreciate it. So Lew, if we could, as I sort of said in the intro, your resume is quite extensive, and you have done some pretty huge TV shows and movies. I'm very interested to kind of know your early life. So kind of what was your life like sort of before you got into acting?
Oh, as a young boy, I was a typical active, loved sports, tried to find as much sport activity as possible when the school bell rang, get me in a game, or pull me out of the game to get me to school. And it ended up that our American pastime, baseball, ended up being my passion. I loved baseball and still do to this day. And so that took me off the schoolyards into organized team play in little league, what we call over here. I'm trying to equate it to your football, for instance. You know, every young lad likes to go out on the pitch and have a match with his boots and his kit. I know. See, I'm married to a Brit, so I know all these terms. And I was no different with our pastime, which is baseball, and played all the way through high school, and then got a college scholarship to go play at university, which was a small college called Rollins, and played on that team and got a lot of exposure because that was in Florida, which is one of our warm weather states and a big baseball state where they play a lot, and got exposed to the professional ranks where I got drafted and went out and played as a minor leaguer, as a professional minor league player, and played for a while, and then started, I guess my playing days everybody just became better than I was. So, you know, if you can't do it, what do you do? Teach, right? So I became coach, and then they started to uh, train me into scouting, which is out looking for players, looking for guys that had physical skills potentially that could play in the in the major leagues. And then they decided, you'd be a good executive. You know, we might think that you're capable of running a team someday, so we're going to give you some executive training. And while I was doing that, I recall following a girl into a building to chat her up for um, a dinner date, and it was a theater, this building, and I saw, I suppose, for the first time that I actually noticed, I saw theater being done in front of me. It was an acting class, and I thought, oh, that's where I belong. I can do that. And I thought I could, and I couldn't at all. We all think we can, like singing. You know, we all sing very well in the shower, but
Absolutely.
when pressed upon to perform, it's a different story. So I was continuing with my baseball career, and then kept pursuing acting a little bit as a hobby and getting some training. And then my baseball career took a strange turn. The team I was working for, the Houston Astros, got sold, and there was new ownership, and in that, management was changing. And I didn't get fired, but I didn't get invited back. So I guess I did get fired. And I had a chance to continue on and get another job in that field of baseball, or maybe pursue acting, which I took a leap of faith and went to Brooklyn College to learn how to act. And then came back to Houston, Texas, and started sort of my career very slowly through regional theater, and ultimately getting a chance to do some stage at the Alley Theater, which was the big house in Houston. So, I feel like I'm starting over every year, or all the time. And I think that, well, that sounds, people say, well, you've got all these credits, how could you feel like you're starting over? And I think it's okay to feel that way, because I think one of the things I wished somebody had told me is how prevalent change was going to be. And you think things are going to stay the same, and they should equate to this. I've done all these things. That means I'm clearly capable, and I should keep going forward. And the industry itself changes. Technologically, it changes, and you're better served to start over with those changes, or don't forget that you're kind of always starting over. And that's a good, fresh perspective to have. And that would have been something I'd have liked to have not had to pay the dummy tax that I've paid in the last several years about, don't forget how you started. A wise actor gave me that advice. Herschel, Scott Wilson, God rest his soul, he told me that. And I've taken it to heart. It's helped a lot, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I really love those stories of people that kind of, you know, as you said, sort of when you left baseball, you kind of like rolled your sleeves up and just decided to go for it. You know, it's funny because there's a lot of the guests I've had on have had very like similar situations where they've just thought, you know what, like this is what I want to do. This is what I feel like I was meant to do. So I'm just gonna like pull my sleeves up and just go for it.
Yeah, I mean, that's what it always is, right, Sam? I mean, it really is. I think you have, what would be best is for you to be able to say, what I must do this. So that tells me you're passionate about it. And then when you know you must, kind of know why. Why must you do this? Well, because I want to be famous, or I want to be rich, or I want to help my family, or, okay, so the why, now you know what you want and why you want it. The how takes care of itself. And these stories all seem so coincidental, but they do follow a certain pattern of a math equation. They put it forward, they went for it, and looks like they're doing okay. So the key there is putting it forward and going for it, right? And I've always felt when I was a young actor, I would take actors out to lunch. So I'd go watch them on stage and enjoy their performances and wait for them after the show, like at the West End, and say, loved your performance, sir. Would I be able to take you to lunch tomorrow and just have a visit about acting? And, you know, you want to get an audience with an actor, offer them a free lunch. And so that always worked. And then I would ask them, what is it that would be helpful to me? And you get the basics, you know, you get, well, you know, work on your reading, work on your diction, your voice, your physical presence, work on your stagecraft, your blocking, understanding, all those things. But now and again, there'd be this wonderful philosophical piece of gold, and one of which was an actor. His name was Randy Ladner. I can't believe I remember his name, but of course I would, because he gave me this great piece of advice. He said, the only person that needs to give you permission to be an actor is you. But when you say, and you go home for the holidays and say, yes, I'm an actor, and someone says, oh, you mean you're waiting tables? You say, no, I'm an actor, but in your heart, you believe it. And that's giving yourself permission. And so it doesn't come just because you say it, but it comes because you believe it. And that, I think, is part of the must and the why and the belief. So you start with belief, you have behavior, and that equals results. And it becomes this math. And I think that those are important things. Those are the things I like to try to impart on young anyone's or old anyone's. You know, this is what I think has worked for me. Because you do spend a moment, you take a moment and go, how did all this come about? How is this possible? And you try to, or I do, like a role, like a character, I try to develop a picture, you know, of who this is and why. So long answer to your question. Sorry.
No, I love it. That's perfect. These are the things that we love to hear. You know, this is, as I sort of said to you off camera, things that I love about these is that it doesn't matter what age the person is or whatever their situation is in life, that they can listen to these words that people like yourself say, and they're like, do you know what? My passion, my hobby, I'm now gonna make the first step and actually go for that to become my dream. So, you know, those kind of words are brilliant. Thank you. So in regards to, obviously, a lot of your movies and TV shows that you've done, I kind of really want to focus in a lot of the work you've done around Rob Zombie's movies. So I'm a huge fan of The Devil's Reject and the first Halloween, as well as 31, which is, I think, one of the more recent releases in 2016.
Yeah.
How's your relationship kind of been with Rob Zombie? He seems to kind of like you in a lot of the movies he seems to direct.
Yeah. So when I first moved to Hollywood, there was a casting director named Monica Mickelson who had cast me in a movie in Texas, and it was a film called Serving Sarah, with Matthew Perry and the lovely Elizabeth Hurley, one of your countrymen. And I got sick and was unable to do the film. And she replaced me with Mike Judge, who went on to create Beavis and Butthead and do wonderful work as the filmmaker Mike Judge. The point with that is that she didn't forget me. So when I came to Hollywood, she was casting a Rob Zombie movie called The Devil's Rejects. And I read the script, and I had never seen anything like that in my livelong day. The very first page, there's some giant dragging a bloody corpse through the woods. And I didn't know what to make of this. So nonetheless, I prepared and went in and did the audition. And I went to the South by Southwest Film Festival in Texas, and I got a call from Monica, and she said, Rob really liked your audition. And I was like, oh, that's nice. I didn't I knew who Rob Zombie was, and I knew White Zombie more. Didn't listen to a lot of their music, but knew it. I'm like, okay. I was kind of afraid, and, and so um, then she called 2 days later and says, "Yeah, you're the guy. You're Adam Banjo. He likes you." And the point is, there were some like really cool cats like Steve Zahn and Jeremy Davies, who I really looked up to, those guys, and they were auditioning for the same role. And I was like, this must be a big deal. What the hell? And well, then I was really scared because I just got a job from this crazy rock and roll guy. So I called a friend of mine, Walton Goggins, who is had done House of a Thousand Corpses for Rob Zombie. And I'm like, hey, I'm a good Southern Christian boy going to work for this devil worshiper. What should I do? He laughed at me. He said, "What is wrong with you?" He said, "Go do the movie. You're going to have an incredibly great time and a friend for life." And those are really true words. That's exactly what happened. And I had just a wonderful experience working on The Devil's Rejects for all the reasons you can imagine and some. The big thing for me was, and you referenced that it's your favorite. And I think it's your favorite because it's so nuanced and it's so rich in detail. And every one of those characters lives many layers of lives, no matter how little they're in the movie. They have these wonderful arcs, all of them. And I just think there was something really special and lightning caught in that bottle. And on top of that, we had this great foundation of masters of the genre, the horror genre, like Sid Haig and Bill Moseley and William Forsythe and Ken Foray. And they have this really wonderful skill set that they can really encroach your personal space. They creep in on you, and before you know it, you're feeling, and they do this to the camera without the camera being aware of it. Now, I was very observant during filming to recognize this, and I'll always be grateful for having had that experience and to get to work with Jeffrey Lewis, who was such a blast. You know, he's like, I'm Clint Eastwood's best friend. You know, he had a card that said that because they'd done all those Every Which Way But Loose movies. And it was so just great. And Rob was so exciting, and he's very genuine. He's intense. I always say he knows what he likes and he likes what he knows. And so there's not really a gray area. He doesn't mind you improving. He doesn't mind you adding something, but it has to work. And if it doesn't work, he's not going to try to like, okay, let's fix it. He'll just move on. If that doesn't work, let's not waste any time or energy. I think because he's a performer, I think he recognizes right away, yes and no, as that goes. But he's about the work. He's tireless. But he's got a great sense of humor, and it doesn't suck hanging with Rob Zombie and being part of one of the stories that he tells. And I think he's just gotten better. I think The Devil's Rejects there was something that happened at the table read that just kept happening every day on set. It was like the World Cup, you know, it just kept getting better and better until we were on the final day. And then, you know, I think that movie holds up obviously very well. Halloween, he was very, he was very conscious of wanting to pay homage and respect to John Carpenter's Halloween. Yeah. Give it a little backstory. Not everybody appreciates that, but even still, I think his effort was with integrity and respect. And then we get to 31, which is the next one I did, and that was just, that was mean. I thought Noel Cluggs was the worst character I had ever performed in Halloween, and then Psycho Head comes along, which is by far the worst guy I've ever done. And it was difficult because I kept trying to find some reason, you know, with Noel, you know, he didn't have a good upbringing, and I wanted to get all the guys to sort of be nasty lots with me so that I wouldn't feel so bad about myself. And we were going to get the big guy, you know, little guy, big guy syndrome, get the big guy under my thumb. None of that worked for 31. It just, I couldn't find a reason. Why were we so, you know, Clockwork Orange on acid? And in the end, I just used one of Rob's songs. I think it's Dragula. Yeah, I'm fairly certain one of the last verses is "I will never die." And as I'm being cut in half with the chainsaw, I'm yelling that. And that was the only way I could make it work. And Rob was very helpful to serve me as a director, for sure, as he always is. But that was a difficult movie. We shot it very quick, and it was very physical, and it just wasn't my favorite out of the three. Let's put it that way. But I recognize on screen it holds up, obviously. And now he's out doing the Munsters, which is a really fun show from my childhood, or even before my childhood. But we saw reruns. I don't know. Did you get the Munsters in the UK ever?
Well, we never got it sort of officially released, but you could kind of find other ways to see it on usually on online. Yeah. So yeah, it's great.
It's got a great sense of humor to it, and so I think he is a huge Munster fan. So it couldn't be in better hands, and I'm really excited. He's got a great cast, obviously, with Jeff as Herman and Sherry as Lily. You know, it's going to be, and Dan Roebuck's fantastic as Grandpa. I'm really excited, really very, very excited. And so, getting back to our favorite word of this, our topic of this podcast, change. You know, I think directors have to continue to grow or evolve, and we could call that change, right? Evolution is change. And so we've watched him a little bit evolve, not so much away from his casting, but grow it, you know. And so with the Richard Breaks, for instance, and with Jeff Phillips, and so he's added on to his ensemble, but not afraid to. So it never bothers me if I'm not included. I know that I'm part of the family, and this might not be the one, you know. Or if Rob called tomorrow and I picked up the phone, yes, it would just be yes, right? So, but I really respect him as a filmmaker, a storyteller, that he needs to use new faces, new places. So, so he's doing that. And I think it's going to be great. I'm very supportive.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I definitely think I'm coming from like a very general perspective, right? And I definitely think he gets a little bit of a hard rap. I think because a lot of people, I feel personally, know him from the first Halloween remake, and because it was so, you know, different to the original, even though you could tell he was adding the elements to it, I definitely think people kind of took it the wrong way in a sense. But for me, I just feel with every movie he does, you know, even just from a viewer's perspective, you can see how much energy and passion and desire there is in every movie. And that's kind of why I personally do sort of connect a lot with his films, because I'm really into people that you could just tell this is what, you know, they're not half doing this and half doing that. Everything has to be perfect.
Yeah, that's an understatement with Rob. He's definitely the guy. So like if you went and had him and said, well, Rob, I've written a few songs and I'd like to be a musician, he would just say, well, then go do it. He'd say it's on you, and you can't ask me for help. You can ask me how I did it, but at the end, it's got to be you. And so he's given that advice to all of us so often, and it's good advice. It's good advice. So when you say his passion shows up on screen in his work, it does. It so does.
Absolutely. And so something as well that I couldn't believe. I actually didn't realize until after I'd watched 31 that it was actually you that played Psycho Head.
Oh, because... I know, that was so crazy with the mask and the paint. Yeah. You know, I wasn't sure, again, we saw the script and it was pretty rough. And when I say rough, I mean just hard, hard fare. It wasn't a pleasant guy, and it was hard to find a backstory for him. But we went into wardrobe, and they had us originally in sort of coveralls, kind of redneck. And I was like, what really bothers me or makes me nervous is when a man doesn't have a shirt on walking around the street. And he's like, oh yeah. I said, that bugs me, and maybe shorts. So next thing I know, I'm in Daisy Dukes without a shirt and being painted on. Of course, he comes over and spray paints the big penis on my chest with a big heart around it, and writes on my back 100%, motherfucker. And then it was on. Then he goes, there, psycho head. And he goes, do you have anything to add? And I go, what could I add? But I did go over with a Sharpie and write on my chainsaw, Mr. Dickhead. And so, so we found our little nuances as we went on. One of the other cool things, I like to do this with Rob because he's a music guy and he has a great taste of all music. He's actually he's really keen on pop music, believe it or not. I mean, he knows his music, but he could tell you every ABBA song there is. And so I like to go to him and say, Rob, what's a song that sort of, you would say, informs my character? I'll offer him something. I don't ever just go blank. And for this one, I think I oddly offered Elton John's Benny and the Jets for Psycho Head. Like my theme song. He's like, what the hell? He goes, nah. And then he hit me back with Black Betty by the Ram Jam. And so that, and he would blast it to get us kind of in that place over the loudspeakers on set. It was really fun. And it was, motivating. It was great. So don't be surprised if you ever hear Rob Zombie do cover of Black Betty, which would be fantastic.
I'll definitely look out for that. So of course, as well as we sort of briefly touched on in the intro, another show obviously you're primarily known for is The Walking Dead, by playing Axel in season 3. How did that role kind of come to be?
Yeah, well, that was, we used to have a saying in the United States based on a commercial or an advert, as you would say, about a stockbroker, E.F. Hutton. I got it the old-fashioned way. I earned it, which just means that I auditioned for it. I had gone in for the casting office for The Walking Dead. First of all, the graphic novels had come across my desk, and I thought they were really well done by Robert Kirkman and really violent. And then someone said, yeah, we sent them to you because I think they're doing a TV show for that. And I'm like, they're never doing a TV show on this. What did I know? And then lo and behold, I got asked to come in and read for the role of Merle and to do that monologue, right? Mm-hmm. And thankfully they hired Michael Rooker to do that, because how could we have Merle without Michael? And then a few weeks later, they called me in to read for Merle had a brother, but he didn't have a name and he didn't have any lines. So they just gave me the same lines and said, try to read those, but different than you did before. And that ended up being Daryl, which thankfully they hired Norman Reedus for. So by the time Axel came around, they really knew who I was over at The Walking Dead. And they were like, yeah, we think Lew is right for this. At the time, I was doing a movie called The Lone Ranger for Walt Disney. And I was a little nervous because I had this really cool mustache for the Western. And the schedules were going to have to work together. But having had the experience before, I realized I'm going to show up in The Walking Dead and they're going to want to cut my mustache or trim it, and can't do that. So I said, look, guys, I'm going to have to pass on this role because I can't really screw with this mustache. And they're like, no, we love your mustache. I'm like, I know you say that, but and really I was just trying, Sam, to get more money out of them, but which didn't work. But I ended up doing the show. They didn't mess with my mustache. In fact, Axel's mustache precedes him. And I think it all worked out just grand. When we arrived to do the show, they had kind of presented Axel as one kind of a guy. And then they, like the day I showed up, my first day, they spun it and they said, no, we don't want him to be so intense. We're looking for maybe a little levity and a little lightness, because originally, we had talked about him being this serial killer that was a wolf in sheep's clothing type guy. And so there are all these elements that I had in there because I wasn't sure in the end who he was going to be. But so I wanted to leave some drawers open in the closet in case we had to go into them. But yeah, it's been the gift that keeps on giving. It was such a great show to work on, a familial show. We were all very close. We all and are still close, and not just those of us who work together, but there's like this huge family. Oh, you did The Walking, you were season 10. Oh, great. Yeah, I was season 3. We're like stepchildren. We get at family reunions, and it's good. It's really good. And so Andrew Lincoln and John Barenthal and Lori, Sarah Wayne Callies played Lori. They made a pact that first season, like, look, we're doing a show about zombies. We'll call them walkers, but we know what they are. And we're probably not going to get to do this more than the 6 episodes they've hired us to do, but let's do the best work we can. Maybe someone sees it and we get to go do another show somewhere. And that is the baton that's been passed along for every new member, that do the best you can. You're here to help. You're here to pull on the same side of the rope. There's no hierarchy. There's no divas. You're being brought in to help us build. So bring your hammer, because we need you. And that's the same. I talked to kids that are hired this year, and they're like, yeah, they told me. I'm like, yeah, that's the same speech I got. And it's usually given by one of the preceding casts, one of the OGs. And it's great. And I've never worked on a show like that.
Amazing. Yeah, so because that's something I was actually going to ask you about. So obviously you started in season 3, and I guess by then there was kind of like a staple of cast and a staple of characters that had now been there for 3+ years. So what was it like, sort of almost like infiltrating that kind of family environment?
Well, it was great, to be honest, because season 2, they had all been at Herschel's farm, rather contained, kind of kumbaya around the campfire, waiting for something to happen. Season 3, everybody was really revved up because they had left Herschel's farm and were going to this prison where they saw 5 new humans. Wow, 5 new players. This is great. So we were really lifted up. They hadn't seen new characters or new humans in a year and a half. And so everybody was anticipating us from the graphic novels. Everybody was anticipating. And when we showed up, and we were really brought in with excitement, and it was great. And there was always talk that we would have a kind of a standalone episode that they do now and again about a character, where one of us would tell the story of what went down in the prison, the riots during when the virus had hit everybody. And but they killed us all, and so none of us could tell that story. We thought one of us would make it out of the prison, and I guess I lasted the longest, but didn't quite make it out of the prison. The governor showed up, and then by then the governor shows up at the end of season 3 and into 4 with Woodbury, and then the show just opens up. It's Woodbury, Terminus, Alexandria, Hilltop. I mean, you've got, everyone up to Negan, and now look where we're at. So it was great. We were really championed because we were fresh new faces, new blood, so to speak.
Yeah, I remember that time. Yeah, definitely it was a complete sort of breath of fresh air. Um, it is a shame though the way kind of Axel's story ended, because I definitely feel like there was so much more story to be told, like you said, and it's a shame. Like I said, he was a I think the fans slowly started to kind of warm to him and sort of accept him as like almost a main cast, and then the next minute it just feels like he was just taken from us.
Yeah, well, that's kind of their formula, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, well, I always wanted to land Axel as kind of the voice of the audience. He would say things that everybody was thinking, oh, you must be a lesbian because you got the short hair. I mean, we were all wondering about Carol, right? And so I thought that was really fun about Axel, but he just wanted to fit in and be a friend, really. And he was getting pretty close with Carol. They had a friendship for sure, if not more. Who knows? And the governor showed up. He was going to make an initial assault, and then the war was going to happen. And they just knew that he had to draw some blood on that initial assault, or he'd be rather impotent. And it wasn't just Axel. There were like 5 people on the chopping block, and 3 of them were series regulars. So it was, people would come up and go, Lew, man, I just read the script. I'm so sorry, dude. That sucks. And I'm like, you have no idea how close it was to being you. And they couldn't decide for the longest time. Andrew Lincoln was so kind because he went to bat for me to stay. But in the end, it was part of the story. And so my initial reaction was to try and talk them out of it. Naturally, I do this, what I call the denial dance. I'm going to give you a bunch of different ideas that this is going to work better. Just hear me out. Let's get rid of that other guy. He's an asshole. No, okay, all right. So finally, when you realize, look, it's the die is cast, you must then do service to your character and honor your character's death, and for not just for you, but for the audience, right? And so that was important to me. And I just they asked what I thought, and I said, well, you guys, your writing is exceptional. I can't help, but it would be great if we could make it rather shocking. And I remember having seen the president of the United States on video, John F. Kennedy, getting shot in the head, and how shocking it was in, just speak, so I thought that would be a good approach. And I was really happy how we were able to execute it, because I think we caught most of the audience off guard, just warming up. So the whole point was to not indicate that moment was coming, to really kind of make it fun and light and happy, and tell a little story about my brother, and then bang, it's over. What the hell just happened? Can't believe it. No. And so we had a good shock factor there.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it was something that I don't think any fan really expected, because it wasn't even like um, you know, maybe a few episodes before, like he wasn't really around. Like he was prominent around a lot, especially in that episode. And as you said, the way it was done, I think was for sure shocking.
Yeah. Yeah, we and Melissa McBride, who plays Carol, she was such a big part of that. She was, because her reaction to everything that I was doing was so great, and it was really a joy to work with her. So she gets a lot of credit for all of that happening. The thing was, when I got shot, my thing was, I want her to have to deal with it. So I just dropped like a sack of potatoes in her arms. I actually fell into her, which then she had to have all my blood on her hands. And what just happened, she needed to be shocked and still survive, because she was getting shot at. So she wisely just drug my carcass to a position where it was a shield, essentially, human sandbag, to take bullet hits, I guess. And I give her credit for that too. But I really was making it hard on Carol in the moment.
Absolutely. And obviously coming with The Walking Dead, but obviously also, in my opinion, being very, very much like almost like an icon within the horror franchise, because of horror fans have there's a very diehard core fan base, especially for people to go to meet actors like yourself and to get autographs and photos. You must get asked to do quite a few of the like comic conventions.
Yeah, you know, when you're on the show, particularly The Walking Dead, you're quite popular and you're invited to do a lot of them, several in the UK, from London to Birmingham to I've been to Nottingham. I've been to uh, Milton Keynes.
Milton Keynes, yeah, that's not too far from where I am.
Yeah, maybe not your best foot forward, Milton Keynes. But also Trent. Is it Trent on Stoke or Stoke on Trent?
Oh, Stoke on Trent.
Thank you. I've been so all over in the UK, Germany, Glasgow. We've been up to do that. So yeah, we get invited to go all manner of places, let alone in the United States, to do conventions and to meet fans or the audience, as we like to refer to them. And it's great because you get this personal experience with these people who have had a personal experience watching you. Well, when you know what I was doing when you got shot in the head, I had my cat and was giving it a bath, and I damn near drowned that cat because I was so shocked, and I was holding it down saying, no, no, no. I've heard all manner of stories, and it's just crazy. But it's important, I think, to connect with the audience so that they have a chance to let you know the experience they've had. That's important. That's important. If it's important to them, it's important to me, right?
Absolutely. So for you, I guess how's your general experience been with fans, and regardless of what sort of show or movie it's been, how have you kind of found the interactions?
It's always, with it's always with purpose. So they need to tell you something. They need to express something. They need to meet you. They need to wonder about something. I had this question. And so for me, it's always different. And sometimes you have to work it out of them a little bit, make them feel comfortable enough to tell you what's on their mind or ask you that question they've been wanting to ask you. I've not really had any bad experiences. Of course I have, but I couldn't tell you. I couldn't remember what they are. But you meet so many people. In general, it's great. And I think it's important to meet people you're fascinated with. You should take it upon yourself to go forward and say hello in a very congenial manner and say, I'm so and so, introduce yourself, and I just wanted to meet you, shake your hand. Although that's become different now that we're coming out of COVID. I see so much less handshaking. We do a little bit of the elbow now,
Yeah.
maybe fist bump. Then we got hand sanitizer. But yeah, it's always a good experience. It's a good opportunity to hear what they think of you. Occasionally there's been a couple that are like, I didn't like you. I didn't like your character. I don't like you. And I'm like, okay, well, I must have done a good job then, because I'm typically a likable person. And if you didn't like me, then I'm doing something. I must be a hell of an actor. But yeah, it's been good. It's great. And we meet so many people, for sure, from all walks of life. That's one thing, the horror fan is, as you said, very loyal, very educated, very well versed. The Walking Dead fan, on top of that, is very diverse, from doctors to teachers to lorry drivers to it just covers the whole spectrum of where these folks live and come from.
Absolutely. You know, I think as you sort of touched base with it, you know, there's always going to be, no matter what you do in life, there's always going to be the odd person that maybe might, maybe feel a bit brazen that day, and they want to say something about, negative or whatever. But from what I kind of take from a lot of these is that there's quite a good core fan base that really appreciate all the work that you guys do. And as I said, having the opportunity to get to meet people that they idolize on TV is just one of the coolest things ever.
Yeah, and I think that because I don't remember growing up where there were too many opportunities for me to go out and do these like conventions. They weren't as busy or promoted the way they are now. Now they're a big thing. I mean, you could see the Walking Dead fan convention, you could go to a Supernatural fan convention, or Star Trek, or Sopranos. I mean, you could Game of Thrones, you could go see them. I mean, Harry Potter, you could go meet just about anybody, And so I think that is very, I think it's an interesting opportunity for people to kind of get to meet those people who have lived on their television screens on a particular night. Doctor Who, how many Doctor Who's have we met? And so yeah, I think that's great. I actually do.
That's brilliant. And as you said, it's I think at one point in life there was it was almost inconceivable that you could go to a place and meet sort of X, Y, and Z actor from one of the biggest TV shows of all time. But now it's like there's so many of them. You could almost every single weekend throughout the year, could literally attend an event.
Yeah, that's the truth. That is the truth. There's no doubt about it. And in general, we're always happy to be there. And we know we don't take it for granted. We know that it's a gift. And occasionally it gets to be a lot of travel. We might get a little fatigued, but for the most part, it's amazing to get to meet so many people.
Yeah.
And also you're meeting people that have kind of the same passion. They're together. They have this commonality that's that everybody gets, and like no one shows up and goes, "What show are you from?" I don't. The Walking. What? I've never heard of that. Is that the Sean Penn movie? No. Oh, that's Dead Man Walking. Sorry. Okay. No, I don't know who you are. Occasionally, but not very often.
Yeah, for sure. So obviously a lot of the things we've talked about today about your career have obviously been TV show and film, screen acting. Would you ever sort of dip your toe again into sort of theatre work?
I think I would if it was something that I just had to be part of as the story. That being said, on a side note, a few years ago, let me preface it by saying, of course, we all have a bucket list, right? So maybe on my bucket list would be to do a Broadway play, to at that level, or West End, at that level. Yeah. So yes, that's a short answer to your question is yes. A few years ago, they did a Broadway musical based on a film that I had done called Waitress. And in the middle of that run, they reached out and said, "Would you ever consider reprising your role as Cal, the diner manager?" And my wife was like, "Oh, you must. I mean, it's Broadway. You've got to do this. It's a musical. Remember, we talked about this, about singing in the shower, It's the reason I landed that seed way back when we started this interview. So they said, "Well, we'd like to hear you sing if you don't mind. Could you put something on tape and send it to us?" So I did. And they're like, "Oh my, do you think you'd have a few months to come up here that we could work with you on your singing?" And I was like, "I don't know. I probably could be doing something else. I get the message, but looking back, and my wife reminds me, you probably should have gone up and let them help you with your singing and maybe went and done Broadway to have that experience. My gosh. And so the short answer is yes, but I gave you the long answer, which was also yes.
No, like I said, I do think that we kind of said this even back at the beginning. You know, if there's something you really want to do, you know, the opportunity is always going to be there. Again, you just got to kind of work at it, I suppose. But you know,
I'd say
that'd be so
before
cool.
theater, I'd say things in the industry that I'd like to do prior to before maybe going back to theater, Sam, would be to write and to direct. I'd like to write something that gets produced and or direct something that gets produced. And I think that there's those things I believe will happen.
Yeah, absolutely. When they do, you'll have to keep us updated on that, because that's something I would
Oh man,
100%
Sam's
be
Universe,
interested
of
in.
course. It's going to be, how do you think I'm going to promote it? I'm already promoting it.
I guess one last thing really I wanted to ask you is, to anybody sort of watching or listening out there, if you could kind of give them one piece of advice, what would that be?
Be yourself. I mean, the same piece of advice your mom gave you when you went out on your first date. Just be yourself. Again, if somebody had told me that when I was going out and auditioning, they just wanted to know who Lew was. They knew Axel. They'd written the role. They knew who Noel Cluggs was, or Adam Banjo. Those roles were written and on the page. That's who they were. But who's Lew? And so try to bring the character into who you are. And you're doing YouTube or TikTok, be you. Don't try to be who is really popular or does their being them. Do you, because you're enough. And that's a hard concept to get your head around, but it's kind of who you are. It's your truth, and the truth will shine, and that's when you're really shiny, is when you're you. And you're enough, whether you're working at a pub slinging Guinness, or you're busking down at the fountain in Piccadilly Market or something, or you're doing a play off the West End. To be who you are, as Hamlet said, to thine own self be true. And the truth is the brightest light there is. So be true to you. That's what I would say.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much. Do you have any sort of social medias or anything you want to mention where people can
yeah,
follow
I
you?
do Twitter. Interestingly, my Instagram account, I got fished, Sam, a year and a half ago, and some guy took my account. It's my fault because I didn't have to click on the link, did I? But I did, because I guess I got nervous because they told me something like they were Instagram. They were going to shut me down if I didn't, reach out to them. So I did. And the next thing, I lost my account. Then that person took the Lew Temple account and went to try to fish a bunch of other verified account holders. At some point, my Instagram got shut down. Then it was given back to me, but the algorithm system shut it down again. So I've just never tried to get back on that. So Lew Temple Actor on Twitter. I have a Patreon account, which is called the Texican on Patreon. And if you subscribe to that for $5, you get to see a bunch of behind the scenes stuff, a bunch of auditions, and we talk about writing stories, telling you your story. You can't walk out on your own story, so let's get busy telling your story. So that's Patreon, the Texican, and I think there's a Facebook fan page, and that's enough. LinkedIn. Anybody do? I do LinkedIn. I like LinkedIn for all you LinkedIners. I'm a LinkedIn fan. Good business being done on the LinkedIn if you need,
Yeah,
need any
absolutely.
business to be done.
Okay, brilliant. What I'll do is I'll make sure I drop all of that in the top of the description so people can kind of keep up to date with what's happening in your life and any of your sort of upcoming projects. So that'd be great.
Appreciate that, Sam. That's what I like
But,
about you. You're always willing to help somebody.
hey, you know, you're helping me by coming on the show today. It's like I said to you off camera. This is for me one of the most surreal things. Getting to speak to people like you is just such a true blessing. So I just want to thank you so much for joining
Well,
us
you're pretty
today.
good at it. It doesn't suck. You don't make it painful. So good on you, right?
Hey, that's the best words I could hear. Like the worst thing ever someone could say to me, "Oh no, this is awkward."
No, it's great. It's been a proper good chat. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.